type of assessment in nature, and it also provides efficient grading, like it is said, it is an auto evaluation platform. Challenges in traditional assessment. So yes, lack of meaningful feedback and explainability. So traditional assessment, we all know, has a pattern where it's only provides the scores to the student but doesn't give them in-depth feedback or explainability about what they are learning and how they are progressing in their career. Of course, this traditional assessment has, or it helps in only prioritizing the rote memorization, but doesn't focus more onto developing the higher cognitive capabilities amongst the student. And it is also, it results into learning as an only an ineffective tool, but it is not helping into a learning tool. Like assessment is not turning into a learning tool. Limited practice. So traditional assessment, again, it has a very different way of conduction. So limited practice and lack of feedback is there. Similarly, challenges in manual evaluation when it comes to the faculty side or the admin side of it. Manual evaluation is a challenge because it's time consuming. When it has to go through manual evaluation, there is a limited or inconsistent feedback what the faculties can really provide due to time consuming and large batch size. So there's scalability issue as well. Moving ahead, what Assessfy has to provide here: handwritten, digital, and oral assessment in different ways. So handwritten, when we talk about, it is a pen paper mode where students can write the answers in answer sheet and then upload those scan copies, and then it could be evaluated. Digital assessment in different formats like Word document, PDFs, text editor, and oral assessment where they can record their answers in audio format, which would be further evaluated by the system. It, as I said, it supports all domains and all courses. There's a short video. I would like you all to have your attention here.
Presenting you Assessfy, the world's first AI-powered auto-learning outcome measurement system. Let's look at measurement of learning outcome. A singular outcome like the grade or score of 62 out of 100 is an abstract number, offering no insight into a candidate's capabilities at a granular level. Here is Assessfy AI providing you with deeper level insights into proficiency across the 6 cognitive knowledge and skill levels defined by Bloom's taxonomy. For instance, in this assessment, a candidate performed very well in recall or knowledge and understanding, but poorly on higher cognitive capabilities like application of knowledge, ability to analyze, evaluate, and create. Now you can take action based on this insight. Isn't this a better approach than relying on a singular outcome matrix, such as a simple score? Connect with our team today to witness the magic like you.
So moving ahead, as I said in the first slide, that yes, Assessfy platform is provided into different modes in which you can conduct the assessment: manual mode, co-pilot mode, and autopilot mode. So co-pilot mode is something which is widely used by the faculty members and the educators, because this gives them a freedom and where they can really intervene and help the students or the evaluation to be in a better way. So co-pilot mode is something which is widely used by the faculty members. Uh, Let me introduce you to one of its kind of evaluation process what we have introduced, which is project-based learning and the evaluation which is done by the Assessfy platform. So project-based learning is something where what we are doing is here, right from project ideation bank, the entire project tracking and project based learning can be monitored through Assessfy platform. So project ideation is somewhere you can have all the ideas, all the topic for different kind of domains available on the platform, and you can manage the end-to-end workflow of the project management, what the students are actually doing. You can track, you can set up the milestone, you can track, based on the rubrics, you can give them the continuous feedback on their performances, how they are doing, monitor it on a timely basis, and of course the evaluation then becomes easy through Assessfy platform. These are a couple of areas what I have covered here, where in K-12 segment and higher education, in schooling, what all subjects we cover, right from computer science to mathematics to arts to English, all kind of subjects are supported over our platform. So that's all from my side. This is the team. We are based out globally. So Catherine, Eddie, and myself, you can connect with us for any of your queries, and we'll be happy to help. Also, we'll be circulating one educator empowerment program form in the chat box for all our audiences. Whoever is interested, any educator can really fill in the form, and you can use our platform as for one of your programs to understand how the platform really works. With this, I would like to hand over to Eddie to start with the panel discussion. Eddie?
Thanks, Anita. So now that we've seen how AI is starting to support assessment in practical ways, let's take a step back and reflect on the broader question. And it's really at the heart of this conversation we're having today. And that is, can we really automate something that is as human as evaluation? Because technology has transformed nearly every part of teaching and learning. But until recently, it really struggled with one of the most subjective and nuanced aspects, evaluating descriptive answers. So that's where artificial intelligence is beginning to shift the landscape. And while we call it artificial, it's really an aggregation of human intelligence. So now capable of supporting tasks that were once considered too complex to automate. And that is what led to the creation of Assessfy, which is now being used by institutions around the world. And it's why we're hosting this discussion, because we want to raise awareness around how AI can streamline faculty workload while actually enhancing instructions. So we've spoken with hundreds of education leaders over the past couple of years, and one insight that keeps coming up is assessment and grading consumes anywhere between 25% to 50% of faculty members' time. And if a faculty member spends just 1/3 of their time on grading and assessment, that adds up to over 500 hours per year. And you multiply that by the amount of faculty that are in any given school, that's a lot of hours. So even if AI could handle just half of that load, because we shouldn't be outsourcing 100% of that to AI, we still need the teachers. So that's 50% of that load would be 250 hours a teacher could reinvest into lesson planning and student mentorship. And we believe it's critical to hear directly from education leaders like the ones on today's panel, their observations, challenges, and vision for what needs to evolve as we prepare for a more technologically advanced future. So AI, when used responsibly, shouldn't replace teachers. It should amplify their impact and support students in developing higher order cognitive thinking skills. So let us use this time for a thoughtful, collaborative conversation with the understanding that we're all still learning how to make the most of this technology. And by sharing our experiences, we can shape a better future for education together. With that, I'm thrilled to welcome our incredible panelists. We have Georgina, Patrick, and Pascal, and all the attendees for joining us. So thank you for being here. So let's start with the theme of this panel. I want to start with you, Pascal. Reclaiming your time with AI auto grading. What does that mean to you in the context of your work supporting teachers and shaping instruction in your school?
Mm-hmm. So thanks for the invitation, and thanks for allowing me to discover a bit more about Assessfy. This is not a platform that I'm using, but I've always been curious for the last 2.5 years to be part of some conversation related to AI and education. So thanks for inviting me and reflecting with you here today. I think the idea of regaining your time is it's a very important element. And so when we talk about anything where we spend some time and anywhere we can relocate the time on what is most critical in our mission, that's fantastic. And that's a lot of work that I've done the last 2.5 years to design some system using AI or not using AI, using automation to try to regain this time. The question is, what do we do with this time? And it's not only also regaining the time, it's regaining maybe also our humanity. And so while we can see how it can be positively impactful for a teacher, we spend 30% of the time to grade papers, to regain some of this time, to relocate it to maybe inject some creativity in the actual practices that happen in the class. We need also to question in some ways this time that I'm not going to spend grading my students. Am I going to miss something about my student? And I think for me, when I discuss with you and I discover a bit what you're doing and some of the work that I've done specifically on testing AI to assess students is more than what I'm going to get from the AI system here, is what I might not get anymore if I'm not part of this process anymore. So when I see the quick presentation that you've done, for example, the fact that you have 3 different levels of collaboration with AI, I think it's something that is really critical. School and maybe teachers will be tempted to really go for it and let AI do the job. I do strongly believe that it needs to be a collaboration. So there is these 2 other elements that you have in your presentation. I think I take the note here. I couldn't capture it. It was going too fast. But the idea of the co-pilot and the idea to be able to have some suggestion with AI, I think it's a great approach, because the process of grading a student is not only to be able to deliver some feedback to the students, is not only to be able to give a score to the student, is not only for the benefit of the student, it's also for the benefit of the teacher, to get the student to have better understanding of the student, to understand a bit better the process of the student. So my concern, and that's why I want to be part of this conversation, and I've been part of many conversations related to AI, my concern is to make sure that we are not, when we think that we're going to gain some time and we're going to support our student better, I want to make sure that we're not going to lose also the insight, the understanding, the relationship that we have with our students. And so I feel this is something that is critical. And in some ways, so it's regaining time, but regaining also of humanity, and regaining maybe a bit better knowledge on our students, and not the opposite, which can be the case when you're going to use technology and artificial intelligence. You might lose understanding, you might lose insight.
Yeah, those are all really important reminders. And grading, it's not just time consuming. It comes at the expense of more deeper, more meaningful teaching moments, but also we don't want to miss this opportunity to collaborate with AI, so that way we can really not disconnect, to your point. So that's a great way to ground us in today's theme. Georgina, do you have anything on your experience or your thoughts on sort of what this means to you, this idea of reclaiming your time with AI auto grading in the context of your work supporting teachers and in your school?
Yeah, so first, I just want to say thank you for inviting me on. And ever since you invited me, I've been thinking deeply about like how this can benefit our teachers and reclaim time. And so I always ground myself in, first of all, are we even using the right definition of assess, which means to sit beside? That's literally what it means. So then I started to think about how could we use AI to sit beside students to be able to see what they're doing in real time, to give teachers information to really drive next steps. Because the only point of assessment is not for grading. I think we need to move away from the idea of grades. It's actually inhumane to assign somebody a number, if we think about that. The whole point of assess is to be able to gain an understanding of what children know, and then use that information to be able to decide on next instructional steps. And then those instructional steps will be taken in a very human platform, which could be small group instruction, one-on-one conferencing, or designing lessons or projects that would best help them to understand that next skill. And I will say I do have some experience. So obviously COVID forced us to assess kind of in this virtual, not say virtual, but technology platform. And so we use something called Assessments. It's not an AI platform, but it was a technology one. But something that we learned is that, number one, kids do want real-time feedback. They want to know if things are right or wrong, not for the grade, just to know like, where did I go wrong? And as long as we're tying that to a reassessment, then that's okay, as long as we're not putting the grade on it. The other thing that we learned is I was able to, because I was a school leader at that time, when we used platforms where they give you real-time data, my interventionists were able to see data in real time and then co-plan with the teacher to be able to create better levels of support. So now you can imagine, as a school leader, I've got my classroom teacher who has information, my interventionist had the information, the special education teacher had the information, and the ESOL teacher. So everybody knew how a student did on a common informative assessment. And guess what they did? They all focused on that one standard and they taught until that student was there. And that's an amazing way to leverage information. If I was to go back to my teaching days, that paper would have sat there. I would have had a delayed process of looking at it. The feedback would have been delayed. Like literally, this is a true story. On the days we gave formative assessments, he'd be on the computer waiting for the data so he could pull the group on the same day. Now that student was getting reteaching, can you imagine, on the same day that they actually took an assessment, so then they could be reassessed and be able to better understand a concept. So what I'd love to see is that the second piece that I've been thinking deeply about is how do we leverage platforms like Assessfy to assess children in their home language? Because I know that children are brilliant. So how do we take Assessfy and be able to take the assessments and say, I need this assessment in these languages, and then ask children, and then the feedback can come in their home language. That would be an amazing way, because I have 42 languages at my school, yet I can only assess right now in maybe 1 or 2 based on the platforms that I have, because it's so limited. So how do we take AI to really find out what children know? Because that is the work of assessment. It is to find out what children know. And I would love to move away from this, like I said, this idea of grading, and maybe AI can help us to take that data and move it into a standards-based platform. So I could look at you, Eddie, and I could say, you know what, you know this, this, and that at this level, and these are the things that you're working on next. And that grading is kind of gone by the wayside, and we actually provide standards-based assessments. So then families and children and teachers know these are the standards they know, and these are the standards that they're working to know. So I do think that this is an opportunity for us to actually create a platform where assessment can be truly used to drive student learning, to give students feedback, and for us to have a collective effort towards helping students get what they need. So then the teacher can actually spend the time planning for those next steps that we all talk about. So those are just like some initial thoughts that I had.
I really love that. And I love some of the points you brought up, particularly about this idea of moving from the single score outcome of like A or B or 80%, which doesn't really show and tell the student or the teacher, like, what do you know, at what level in your, cognitive capabilities do you know that, and what can you apply to real world application. So it's that move from rote memorization to actually turning assessments now into learning tools, which is a very important topic today, and that's something that at Assessfy, that's our core mission. So I love that you brought that up, and also this idea of multiple languages. That's also something we handle. We're in Asia, we're in Europe, and we're here in the US. So we're working across multiple languages. And that's something that AI is really helping to bridge that gap that you mentioned. So thank you for that. Let me pivot here to sort of challenges in assessments. Patrick, I know you're currently a school leader, and you're a principal. So I know you've done a lot of consulting work, various schools and institutions. You've also been a teacher on the ground level yourself. So based on your observations with either your teachers at your school now, or even as a teacher yourself, what are the key challenges that you've observed with assessments, especially like open-ended or project-based assessments? And then how do these challenges impact your school's ability to measure meaningful learning outcomes?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on here. And it was wonderful to not only see the opening presentation about Assessfy, but hear from Pascal and Georgina. I was like, so many of what they just spoke about are things that I've been thinking quite a bit about over the last few years. Even going back to, as Georgina referenced, the COVID times. I remember a lot of the work I had done prior to now was in educational technology, as you said, like doing workshops. I did tons of workshops with teachers through the years on technology in the classroom. And I remember when COVID hit, obviously there were so many, physical and medical concerns we had all over the place, but we also had social and emotional concerns. But I also remember thinking, like, talking to a colleague of mine, like, oh my gosh, like, this is what we've been practicing for with all these, educational technology workshops forever. It was like showtime. So to hear that some of those things that we had been practicing and learning were put to good practice, as Georgina was mentioning, with the ability to react so quickly to student learning, that's fantastic to hear. So in referencing the question that you brought up there, I think traditionally the challenges we face is some of the things that people mentioned already is time. Assessing good assessment takes a lot of time. And it's not just the time to create the assessment and give the assessment, it's the processing on the other side. As folks before me have mentioned, assessment is not just about assigning a number or a grade to a child, to a learner. It's more about, okay, there's decisions to be made now, not just on the side of the teacher. As Georgina mentioned, like, yes, like we have to, as a teacher, we look at that assessment not as a number, but if truly it's based upon standards where each question is tied to a specific learning target or learning standard, you can then, whether you're using AI or whether you're using your own traditional methods, you can look at that and say, over the course of a 20 question, 30 question assessment, what standards did my class as a whole do really well on? What standards did my individual students do well or not well on? So there's decisions to be made about your teaching and your processes based upon the assessment feedbacks. That's where tools like Assessfy or even, something as simple as a Google form were extremely helpful because you can see very quickly where students stood out or fell down. So that process, though, takes a whole lot of time to do. And if you're doing it manually, that those hours that you mentioned are definitely a factor. Putting a digital spin on it or adding a digital element to it does definitely save time. We used a tool in one of my previous districts that students took a diagnostic 3 times a year, like fall, winter, spring, and that diagnostic was used to map them across the units. So like as a teacher, I would come into a math unit, let's say on like, multiplying fractions. And because of that initial diagnostic, I would get a list of students already that I know, based upon that diagnostic, are going to struggle with this particular topic. And that program that we used would give us, these are 5 or 6 different lessons you should do with them prior to them coming into this unit. So those things are, that type of piece is really helpful. But if there were a tool, like if Assessfy could do something like this, and like you, Pascal, I was really intrigued by the manual, the co-pilot, and the full piece, because I think there's a lot of great work that needs to be done with teachers in that manual and co-pilot mode, like understanding the types of feedbacks that these systems are giving. We need to be able to act on that. So if we can shorten that time and have some of these, assessment tools do that for us, that I truly believe gives teachers a lot more time to look at the results and decide what changes can they make in an individual student learning profile and what changes can they make as a whole when they're teaching a whole group. And so that's the piece, the classic Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. Like once you know that you have these deficiencies in your class and individual students, now you must act on that. And I think getting back time and focusing your time on doing that is going to pay huge dividends within the classroom.
Yeah, that's a really valid point. And, to your point, like these challenges of, evaluating, especially like open-ended questions and these types of more complex assessments, it's not about the ability to, the challenges and doesn't lie in the ability to actually assess that. It's the time. So it goes beyond just the grading itself. And, that what you do with that time can really shape how learning is experienced and how it's measured. So thanks for surfacing those. Pascal, I want to go back to you quickly because I know you were also the director of technology previously before being the principal. So where do you see technology, AI in particular, playing a role in supporting your teachers with these assessments and the challenges that Patrick brought up, right? So, and I want to ask, because I know you and I spoke and you had used some AI tools. Are there any examples that you've seen or areas where you think there's potential specifically?
Mhm. So there is potential. I will start before talking about the potential. I will say that what happened under the hood, because we talk about trust also here. Like you design a platform, Assessfy, and that is going to utilize AI. And we have, and Patrick and probably Georgina, all of us, we have used also some platform for assessing. I don't know if you do the map test, for example. There's many platforms that allow to assess the student. And we kind of like not really question the result of the result. I mean, but what happened behind the hood? Who decide? What is the algorithm behind the scene that lead a system to say that the student is performing at a certain level and is in a certain percentile? And so when you're going to utilize AI, now even the people who develop AI have also some difficulty to be able to describe what happened between the input and the output. There is a great level of complexity here, and so it's the trust that we can have in the results. So if you look at assessing some line of code or some mathematical computation, this is where even when we look at teacher assessing student, where you have maybe a bit less discrepancy in the result. A line of code is working or is not working. Well, when you look at some place where we want to be able to assess the student on some domain that may be a bit more subjective, this is where it's become more difficult. And we see already for human assessment some bias. But are we going to have some bias with AI? And I'm not only talking about the bias that we have talked a lot about AI bias and how the AI is designed on some content that's maybe more Western content and maybe not necessarily a lot of content from Asia or Africa and etc. I'm talking also about how the AI is going to look at a student's assessment and is going to decide how the student is performing on that. So I was invited 6 months ago or 8 months ago to participate in a webinar with an organization in UK about assessment. So I decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to go to this webinar, I'm going to test AI in assessing. And so I've designed a very simple system that will assess 250 times the same student work. And 10 bots designed slightly the same way, assessing 25 times the student. So a total of 250. And I tested with Claude, with ChatGPT, different versions of ChatGPT, with DeepSeek. I've tested the system. And what I have is for a student who is performing at a high level, the discrepancy is pretty low. It's the 250 grades are like on a grade from for between 0 and 50 or between 44 and 48. When a student seems to have done pretty good, but have some pretty big confusion on the content, it was a humanity test. The grade for ChatGPT was going from 19 to 25, which is a pretty big discrepancy. And a student who were really struggling was going from 14 to 25, and a discrepancy that is totally unacceptable. And so with a colleague from Panama, where we're reflecting on that, we try to think about, so how can we get to more consistency? And so what we find out, for example, is that the rubrics need to be extremely well detailed. We need to share what are the very clear expectation of what is success. And the more detailed we are, the more closer of consistency we can get. And so here, in some ways, I don't know how Assessfy is designed. I don't know also how Assessfy is in some ways defining success. In Patrick's school, Georgina's school, and my school, maybe a student succeeding can be slightly also different. So how Assessfy allow me also to take in consideration that I'm the United Nations International School. I'm not a traditional school in the center of France that we look at success very differently. And also, how do you design the AI behind the hood to allow us so to have a bit more consistency? And consistency doesn't mean it need to be perfectly exactly the same grade all the time, because maybe it's an utopia. Maybe a very unique grade on a specific student work does not exist. It's normal to have discrepancy. But how do we make sure that what happened behind the hood is going to give me a result that will be closer so to the reality? And in some way here, I challenge a bit Assessfy, like I challenge any other system here. Because what I've seen in technology, and you're right, I was the director of technology also at the UN school before being the principal. And for the last 20 years, I integrate, like Patrick was mentioning, and I integrate technology in my work. I've been tech integrator, so etc. What I've noticed is people that don't necessarily question much what happened behind the hood. But with AI, we have to, because it's going to be very tempting to let AI do everything. And that will have a pretty big impact. So again, here, when we talk about the great usage we can have a great usage if the system is designed in a way that it can take in consideration what means success to me, which is different from Patrick and Georgina, and that can also guarantee also that the work is happening behind the hood, taking consideration also some of the results, for example, that we have when we test 250 grades for the same student and look at this discrepancy, specifically for students struggling, which is probably where we don't want to make any mistake when we're going to assess them. Now, this said, I can see, because I'm doing it not specifically for students for now, and I'm elementary school student. So the integration of AI is going to be different from junior school, from elementary school, middle school, and high school. But I use and I create this system to help teachers in getting some feedback on the report card comment, for example, and I can see how it increased the quality of the reporting and how it allowed the teachers to focus more on what do I want to say, rather than how do I say it. So anything that will allow the student, the teacher, anybody using AI in education or outside education, that will allow them to refocus their time on what is the most critical, will be beneficial. Because the quality of how I say something might not be as important as what I say, because I'm not assessed on how I write anymore. I've been. Well.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of valid points, and I think something you mentioned, which is we should talk about. It's quite important. It's like understanding what's under the hood of the AI. Like, how is it actually working? Because when we understand things and how they work mechanically, then we can use them better, and we know what we don't just blindly trust the AI and then easily, to your point, let it do everything for us. So let me pivot to Bhupesh. Bhupesh, you built Assessfy for your school, Aegis School of Data Sciences, and you've been using it before you brought it public. And you also built that based on your 30 years of education. So I'm curious to hear from you of like how this technology actually works under the hood.
Well, thank you, Eddie, and it was great listening to Georgina, Patrick, and Pascal has really raised a very valid point in terms of really how do AI handle the subjectivity. I'll come to how the AI actually functions. So, though we are calling it artificial intelligence, there is nothing artificial. Right? So I've been teaching machine learning and deep learning for quite long, and I run Aegis School of Data Science and AI, and that is where we have been training LLM models, building up deep learning models, fine-tuning these models. It is essentially the aggregation of knowledge, the knowledge which has been created by human being. Every drop of knowledge which has been created in last 7,000 years, which is written, is being fed. It is like a zip file, in a loose term, not exactly zip file. Just like you are a superhuman being and you have read almost all books available, all knowledge available, and it is in your head. Right? Now, AI is just like that. It is a digital brain. Right? Now, coming back to the Pascal's issue that how do AI really handle the variability is just similar to the human being. So if you have TA, like, so earlier I used to have the TA under me, like 4 or 5 TAs, these are the human being, right? And you need to clearly explain them on what basis they are going to really evaluate any kind of assignment. And that you have to really convey. And still you find difficulty because these are the junior TAs, right? Still they are not able to really meet to your expectation. You have to really further give them the feedback, right? First, you have to really define those criteria properly on paper, which is called rubrics in academia. And then you pass it to them, and then you do the sampling assessment, and then further you give the feedback. AI typically precisely works that way. Right? So in Assessfy, we have included the flexible rubrics. So AI can itself can suggest the rubrics on what basis this question need to be evaluated, or you human being, as a teacher, we already have the rubric template available with us, and you give these rubrics to the AI, and this AI is a digital brain, which can really work 24/7 and has much wider knowledge. And you can also restrict the knowledge. So you can say, okay, don't refer to the global knowledge. right? Refer to this model answer. This is my model answer, right? Refer to this model answer, then the AI will refer to that model answer and grade based on the rubrics. So it is kind of a quite flexible. Having said that, certain areas like, for example, philosophy, where the subjectivity is very high, as an educator, I do not recommend that any kind of AI should be used or any kind of futuristic research, right? Wherein those knowledge has not been fed. It is just like you're hired a TA and who is postgraduate level TA and he's not a PhD, and you're trying to really give him some research assignment to evaluate, which he himself has not studied, right? So you should not be giving anything, any research which is futuristic, which is still not there and it does not have the knowledge, and the human need to be in loop, right? So typically whatever the feedback AI is giving, just like a human, you need to really go back and check whether this feedback is appropriate or not, because here we are dealing with the human. We can't really completely outsource our all cognitive activity to the AI, which is not justifiable as academician, because that's our job, right? It's not only that we are paid, but we have to be very much conscious, right? And that's where this whole human into the loop in form of Copilot is there. That's my small take on how this typically works. Under the hood, it like if you really see from algorithm side, it's very complex. It's all statistical models, right? It's still we are trying to really figure it out how this matrix multiplication is spitting out such a intelligent output, right? Still, we are trying to really figure it out, but that's a kind of magic.
Yeah, thank you for breaking that down. I think it's incredibly important and helpful to understand, what's really powering AI behind the scenes, especially when it comes to trust and transparency. It's so important.
Yeah.
Georgina, I want to go back to you real quick because you mentioned something about the importance of real-time feedback, and that's often said to be extremely critical to learning. So, especially for helping students course correct early. So, like from what you've seen in your school, how important is timely feedback to student success? Can you just share a little more in depth on that piece, and how you might see AI making that more scalable for teachers?
So, I mean, even as adults, we seek feedback, right? We want to know, even if we're in a situation, did I do well or did I not do well? And when feedback is delayed, I think students are left wondering. That's truly what happens. Even for teachers, if I was to go into a classroom and observe a teacher, if I delay my feedback, then she's going to be left wondering, or he's going to be left wondering. So having things in real time is going to be critical. I think some of the things that we have to be thinking about as we build systems is the feedback asset-based? So traditionally, assessments are very focused on what's wrong. And so we've been working very diligently here at Charter Oak. I've even renamed assessments. We've renamed them as show what you know versus these ideas. So can we get AI to instead mark what is right, to have answers that maybe are not quite there yet? Could we somehow mark them as we're in progress of learning and that there's next steps here? And can we use that feedback to be asset-based? Because I know when we've shifted to those terminologies, anything strength-based, we've seen more student buy-in. Like on a test day, because we don't say tests anymore or assess, we just say it's show what you know day. I know it sounds silly, but it has totally changed their idea around, okay, this is not an endpoint. This is what I get to show off. And so how do we leverage AI to be able to give that real-time assessment? And we've even embedded positive affirmations. Could AI do that? You've done a great job. Keep going. You totally know this and this standard. So I mostly work with math. So I noticed that you already know how to add and subtract fractions. Keep going. The next ones are multiply. Like, could we get AI to actually build student identity? Because Rick Stiggins talks a lot about assessment. And what he says is it is the one tool that will break a child. Because I'm sure you all remember that day you got a paper that had a red F on it, because it doesn't go away. But could AI reimagine to say, this is where you are in your progress of learning, this is what you need to learn next? And could we get AI to speak in a way that's positive feedback, strengths-based feedback? This is what you know, this is what's next. And I really like that. I hope I say your name right, Bhupesh, the way he designed the program, that it is not in replacement of the teacher, that it's really about the quality of the user. I 100% agree with that. AI is powerful, but it's only as powerful as the person that's reading what's happening on that screen. Period. End of story. I cannot hand AI to a person who is not a math expert and know if that information on the screen is correct. So what it does is, for highly skilled teachers, it gives them quick information. And remember, like, a lot of times it's just bringing, oh yeah, I totally knew I had that book. Let me go grab it, because I already have the PhD. I already have the master's degree. So it can never replace the human, because the human still comes with the knowledge, it comes with the discernment, and it also is going to make the connection of what's next in that classroom. But I think my major point is that we need to make sure that whatever we're designing in this assessment field, that is, it is strength-based in feedback, it is strengths-based in terms of what we're giving students as feedback, and that it has to be timely, because they are left wondering no matter what. So if we could tell them in real time, this is where you are and this is where you're headed. And I'll share this one interesting idea. One of my friends who's brilliant, her name is Shelby Cole. I'm going to say her name, Dr. Shelby Cole. She's working with American schools at the high school level, and they're XQ schools. One of the major problem areas in American high schools is the algebra course. Many students fail algebra. So what they've reimagined is something actually pretty amazing that I think Assessfy could think about. What they've designed is they've taken algebra, instead of this giant course, as to ideas in algebra, linear measurement, or you might be looking at slope. And what they do is they break down each one, and as students master them, they get a badge. And instead of a grade, now kids are like, I have 4 badges in this class. That is so awesome. That is strengths-based. That is confirming what they know. And I'm thinking, how could we do that even for younger learners? So again, that goes back to mastery-based grading, but it's the idea you get these badges as you pass. So instead of thinking of it as a high school course, we think of it as these ideas within the course. And as we master them, could Assessfy give badges to the children and then give them feedback as to, this is your next step? And then the teacher is monitoring how they're doing and coming in real time to say, okay, this small group, I know you're all working on this. We need to work on this and really think about this. So I just want to share, like, my point of being here today is to really share some possibilities of how we keep this humanizing, strengths-based, really thinking about how do we leverage it to reimagine assessment and get away from this terrible stink of grading that make people feel dehumanized, and getting the red marker out of people's hands and really moving towards marking what's right, so we start to feel good about what we're learning in education. So I hope that's helpful and informative for people, and really makes us to think, how can we make this the best platform that it could be?
Really wonderful points you brought up, and to go beyond just even the personalized feedback to also the acknowledgement and recognition, like you said, in the form of something like a badge. I think that's really wonderful, and then progressing them based on that feedback. I think there's been this like shift for many years now, but it's been a slow process of shift from rote recall, like multiple choice questions, toward assessing higher order cognitive skills, right? In having competency-based education, implementing that at scale. So, I think with that, if you're going to shift from the MCQ questions to the descriptive questions, the looking at enhancing and measuring higher order thinking, with that comes the territory of giving that feedback, adaptive learning, recognition, all the things you brought up. So that's really wonderful. Thank you for that. Patrick, I want to shift over to you. So if your school were to adopt AI tools for assessment, what would the key guardrails you'd want to have in place? So basically, like, to ensure they align with your school's values, protect student interests, ensure fairness, and really also support your educators?
Well, I think the key element I think that's running through a lot of what we're talking about is the human involvement in this piece. A lot of what Georgina just said really reminds me that so much of learning and so much of what and the important part of being in a school situation is the human connection, meaning that not only like we use a tool, and I'll just name it because whatever, we use a tool called IXL, which is a pretty popular tool in the United States for drill-based, learning. You essentially are given a series of questions on a specific topic or standard, and as you answer them, your score increases and whatnot. So you're getting immediate feedback. If you get it wrong, you know right away, and it gives you a little hint as to why you did it or didn't do it. Now, on the surface, like that's a wonderful tool and we use it quite a bit. But on the surface, you would think, okay, like they're getting feedback right away. Oh, that's great. But in the long run, it really burns kids out if that's consistently, if it's overused, because that feedback is not the same as, Mrs. Smith coming over their shoulder and saying, hey, like, let's try a different approach with that one and let's try this or that. There is a lot to that human connection when it comes to assessment and it comes to giving feedback on that. So that's one thing that I would stress is regardless of the systems that we're using to help with our assessments, your role as a teacher is extremely important in that process. Not only like I just described, but I mentioned earlier too, like as with any change in using AI, I think Pascal mentioned this too, like do we have a natural tendency to give too much, to assume that the tool is doing the job correctly and to give our power over to it that way? So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that side. Like, are we training teachers as to, okay, you know, Pascal's, his little experiment that he did with the discrepancy, that's a huge conversation to have with teachers. Like, hey, it's not blind trust here. I know it's a great time saver, and I'm guilty of it too. Like, I'll lean on, a Chat GPT or a Gemini conversation because I'm pressed for time, and I'll just assume that it's correct. And I've had situations where it's gone wrong, and I've made mistakes that way. So I've learned the hard way. But having that conversation and those type discussions with my staff would be important. Like, hey, here's this great tool. Here's the wonderful things it does, but here's your role in it, and here's where we really have to learn about, the time it saves us, but also, the pieces that really require your input. And I think, technology should make us more human and not less. And I think that's what we're getting at here is we want to have tools that enable us to really maximize the benefits of teaching, and interacting with students. If they're in person, and I think I've been reading a lot lately, there's a lot of people pay a lot of money to have one-on-one interactions or small group interactions with, in education. And I think whether that's through your taxes in the United States and the zip codes that you live in or at the higher education level, like people want interaction with other people when it comes to learning these things. So that's one piece to it that I think we'd have to really to make sure that we were really secure on if we were bringing a tool like this into any school setting is that all the teachers would really need to know and understand the role that it plays and the role and how it enhances their role as a teacher. Just a couple other things too that have been kind of floating in my head all throughout. I don't mean to jump off topic here, but like a lot of the things that we are talking about, whether it's standards based or mastery based or anything like that, it's kind of akin to, this idea of getting multiple chances to succeed. It's very akin to game based and play based learning, meaning like there's not a stigma attached to a wrong answer. So I agree. I think if you're building an assessment system, it has to be built in a way that provides positive feedback so that the child or the learner wants to come back and do it again. Georgina's point about the large F, I mean, I can remember very, arguments with college professors about grades and things like that over a letter, and like there wasn't about the work in the paper, it was about the grade. And so I think that's a negative aspect of what we're talking about. So if we can, any type system that provides positive feedback that promotes the learner to come back and do it again, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's really about, this idea of how do we turn assessments from that, just giving us uh, a score that gives us no insight, no idea into what we actually know, to just actually moving away from that and making it a learning tool. And I think a lot of the guardrails you brought up, like, ensuring that the teachers across the board all understand what AI is, how to use it, because it should be augmenting human capabilities. And I think that's such an important guardrail to have in place. And these kind of conversations need to happen alongside innovation, because they don't slow the progress. They make it sustainable. So thank you for sharing that. So for all the
Can I
panels,
add something, Eddie? Sorry, can I add something, Eddie?
please. Yes,
Briefly.
please.
On the guardrail, and I think it can be very seductive. Technology and AI and the result that we get can be very seductive, and I've been seduced in many ways, and hopefully sometime for a great benefit and for an enhancement of what I was able to do. At the same time, there is a recent research on from MIT that showed that there is people who use AI too much, there is a decline in cognitive capabilities. So we're going to start to see also some of those elements. I think one of the guardrails that we need to have in anything we do in a school is to never forget what is good instruction and what is the definition of good instruction for us. Because, for example, some schools, it's not the case for my school as a private school, but some public school, for example, who depend on their result of the student in order to be able to get some funding. I spend a lot of time to try to get student good results and do a lot of assessment, taking them away from good instruction in order to be able to get some funding, for example. And this is where you don't focus anymore on what is good instruction. So what I found, and I found some school, very progressive school, were rooted in inquiry-based learning approach, rooted in social constructivism, and also rooted in being able to enhance the way they provide instruction based on the advancement in technology. They did not necessarily realize that sometimes using AI can push some very traditional way of instruction. And where it can be very top down, where we have advocated for decades that we need to be able to put the student in some complex situation where they're going to have to inquire, where they're going to have to challenge perspective, where they're going to have to not agree automatically with what they hear, but challenge it, where we're going to put two students together, and we're going to try to create an environment where one will be able to challenge the other one. And that's why, for example, we want the teachers sometimes to step back in order for the student to interact more, because it's easier to say to another one, I don't understand what you say, and to say to the teacher, if you say it, I'm just going to trust you. And so in some ways, what we can see with AI also is we can go also in a direction that is a bit more traditional, because it's going to be a bit more top down. It's going to be more like there is a system that there is some hallucination, there is things that maybe are not working really well, but we have also some form of AI now that can have a PhD. And so we can go in the direction where we're going to have the student being placed in some situation where we're going to maximize those use of those AI platform in order to assess our student, but we're going to miss, for example, that good instruction is also to observe the student in action with his peers. Observe a student trying to manipulate some material and challenge a friend on that's not the right strategy to be able to design the system, etc. And so the guardrail need to never forget what is good instruction. See where those type of assessments are going to come into an enhancement of the work we're doing, or even more than enhancement, are going to be able to allow you to do something that you are not able to do without. And be balanced. Be balanced between all those different strategies that you have. I would want to add one more thing, a bit provocative here, Eddie and Patrick and Georgina, and I all agree with you when we talk about humanity, and I think we all talk about humanity and human relationship and how it's important. And at the same time, when we say that it will never replace teacher, it's already happening. There is a school in Texas that have already replaced teachers by AI. There is some school who start to use 20% of their time. The students are going to utilize AI. And we are doing that too also, with iExcel, Dreambox, and all those platforms. It's artificial intelligence too. And the advancement of this technology is such that I think for us, in order to make sure that we will not replace teacher with AI, we need to know why better, not just because of human, a sense of humanity. I mean, you see in the platform that are designed for allowing people to have relationship, the AI companion are booming extraordinarily, where people have better relationship with an AI bot than with a human being, because it just reacts the way that it works for me. And we know in relationship is not. So what is the benefit to be in a relationship with someone who is going to get on my nerves? Because if we can't define what is the benefit of this, we're going to go in having relationship with AI. We need to be able to understand, to go beyond the world of it's never going to replace a teacher, just because it's neat, because it's what we're supposed to say. We need to be very clear, because the technologists who are not necessarily educators are designing it to replace everything because they're here for profit. So voilà, that's also my warning in some ways. We need to know why it's not going to replace teacher. Wow.
That's a really fair point, and I love that you brought that up. And you also mentioned about how the use of or overuse of AI is actually creating a cognitive decline. So that's so true, which is why having a sort of the transparency in the co-pilot mode to really augment making AI and really not just from the technologists like creating it, but also from the users, the teachers, right? Like knowing how to use it to actually truly augment their capabilities, to reduce the mundane aspects of their work, so they could focus on their craft, their art, what they're good at, what they're skilled at. That's so important, and that really can help enhance and increase human connection if handled correctly. So I'm glad you brought all that up. So I want to give us a closer look at how these technologies actually work in practice. So let's take a few minutes. I'm going to bring in my colleague, Pervesh, just to watch a live demo of the Assessfy platform. And then this will highlight some of the key features around AI auto grading, personalized feedback, some of the things we discussed today. And I want to ask all of the panelists to please stick around afterward, because I'll be coming back to you with a final wrap-up question to close out the discussion. So Pervesh, over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eddie. I'm audible to everyone?
Yes, a lot clear.
Yes.
Indeed, a great talk that we are hearing from your side. So my name is Purvesh. I work here as an head customer experience. I'll just quickly start with a present, like what Assessfy AI here. So please allow me to share the screen. Yes, I hope my screen should be now visible to everyone. Yeah, great. So let us quickly start with this. So agenda that I'm going to cover in my presentation here. So this is the quick. Let us see point by point what Assessfy here to offer you. So we'll start with the cognitive question bank first. Okay, so as we say that this is an AI, okay, so the platform helps you to generate the questions using AI, and those questions can be generated on the cognitive levels. Okay, so you can use the framework of Bloom's taxonomy, or if you have your own customized framework for your internal learning, even you can just input that to our Assessfy AI, and that using that framework, the platform can generate those question bank for you. Okay, at the same time, even if you have your own question set of repository of your questions, you can even import that question to the platform as well. So let us quickly see how that can be done here. Okay, so while creating the question bank here, these are some prerequisites that you need to follow. Okay, the type of question that you want to create, which category of questions that you create, for creative, for bachelor's degree, for
Purvesh, you have a bad
master's
bandwidth.
degree,
You
correct?
can switch off
For
your
which course
video.
you want to create these questions?
Purvesh, please switch off your video. You have, I think, bad
Okay, just
bandwidth.
one second.
So at least we'll have a good
Yeah,
quality
yeah.
of audio. Yeah, please.
And so now is it better? Like, is it seamless? Like, you can hear me what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, sure, sure. So here, this is the process where how you can generate the cognitive level of questions here. So just have fill up this prerequisite and just select the number of questions that you want to create, and this whole platform will generate the questions for you. Correct. So generation of question is fine, but the generation of questions on the basis of the course outcome that will feed it, it is very difficult task. So here, once you generate the questions, even you can map these questions with the framework that you're going to use. Correct. So in this instance, I'm just using a Bloom's taxonomy framework. Okay, just select it and just click on generate CLO. Just CLO is course learning outcome, and on that basis it will generate it will map these questions with that as well. Why it has mapped that question with this particular Bloom's or particular course outcome that will be feeding in the system. So once you do that, okay, so you're already aware, like we have seen here in India as well, like this complete task has been done by the faculty members or the teachers manually, where they read out the questions and they read out the title of the course outcome, and then they try to manually match it. So here only the idea here is that it should save your time while you're mapping these questions with this taxonomies. And why this is important, I will definitely tell you in the coming screens. So once you are done with your question bank, okay, now this was for the questions that are generated through AI. If you want to use it for your existing question set of questions repository, even you can do that as well. Okay, so there is a process where how you can upload the questions into the systems. Once you upload the question, okay, this way you can just map these questions with your course outcome. Let's quickly have a look at this. Okay, selecting the type of questions for which subject you want to select the questions topic and just click on search, and then simply select the number of questions that you want to map. As you can see, the learning outcome column is blank currently. Okay, I'm just selecting the questions here, and we will start mapping the course outcome with that. Correct. So this is the process of mapping the questions with the uh, course outcome. That is a framework basically that you're going to use at your site. Correct. Yeah, so let us quickly shift to the next screen. Yeah, so once you're ready with your question banks that is mapped with the course outcome, it is very important for you to create the assessments. Correct. So you can create this different type of assessment, that is multiple choice, descriptive, coding, oral, okay, and even the combination of all these assessments as well. So once you do that, this is a 3-step process that the platform supports, like adding the title of the exam assessment, adding the questions that you just created, and finally adding the participants, that is the students. And finally, once you create these questions, even you can have a look at this as a question paper. You can preview these answer sheets, so these question papers. So while previewing this question paper, you can simply see for each question from which course outcome that question was picked up. Okay, so you're already aware like whether the question paper is well balanced with the course outcome that you want to achieve with that assessment. Correct. In case if you feel like, okay, I need to add few more questions, or there is no questions of this particular outcome, even you can go back and edit those questions as well. Correct. So this way you're ready with your question paper bank that is well mapped with the course outcome. Correct. This way. So once you're done with this, then these are some settings screen. Then it comes the it will go to the students, they will have the assessments, and then comes the picture into the picture is that the grading of the assessments. So first is the normal grading, that is the manual grading that we say, where simply this is the answer sheet preview that I'm just showing you for a handwritten answer. Okay, so this platform supports multiple types of evaluation for digital, for handwritten, for essay, and even for oral and coding assessments as well. So I'm just first showing an example of handwritten answer sheet here. Correct. So you can have a look at this physical look at the answer sheet. That was a question. Okay, this is a rubrics that was defined for this particular assessment. Correct. And you can have a look at this, and simply you can have a physical look at the answer sheet as well. Now you might have a question that how this answer sheet is attached or how it is available on this particular screen. So there are two ways basically. One, you can allow the students to upload the answer sheet at their end basically. Okay, so we have seen here the pattern is like at the end of the assessment, generally faculty is allowed 5 or 10 minutes of time to the students to use the mobile phone. Okay, and using their mobile phone they can upload this answer sheet to the particular assessment. Correct. That is one way. Another way is that even you can ask, once the assessments are done, you can just collect the answer papers from the students, and someone from the administrator or the faculty teacher, they can simply upload this answer sheet at their end as well. So both the options are flexible. Whatever option is convenient for you, you can use that. Correct. So once the answer sheet reaches here on the this paper, you can do the evaluation. So now this was the manual evaluation. As you can see, you can have a physical look and just put the grades. The magic is on the next screen where you can do the auto evaluation. Correct. Now, even just to say, auto evaluation is not our innovation. Innovation is that you can do evaluation, auto evaluation with the use of rubrics as well. Correct. So whatever platforms that are currently available, they do the auto evaluation, but with their own knowledge they can do. It is very difficult for them to do it on some basis of the rubrics, basically a defined rubrics. So here we have some examples for you, the same example, but here the auto evaluation is happening. Now this is the first thing, that you can do the evaluation on the basis of rubrics. The second thing is that to do the auto evaluation, how it works basically, the system will do a transcript of this handwritten answer sheet. Okay, it will create it in a digital format, and then the auto evaluation be happening here. So I'll just quickly show you how the transcript works here. Okay, so before that, I'll just quickly show you the rubrics part. There is a multiple level rubrics that was used for this particular assessment. Correct, as you can see. Okay, this is a multiple, and this was defined by a teacher, by a faculty member. Correct. And as a teacher, you have complete freedom to do the modification for this. Correct. You can put the points, you can put the levels. Correct. And then before the auto evaluation, it does the transcript. So this is a transcript that is done for this particular answer sheet. Okay. And then the auto evaluation works here. And during the auto evaluation, what it does, it bifurcates the answer step by step. So as the way teacher does, like for each step they provide a correct marks. For each incorrect step, it will provide a incorrect, and as well as it will deduct the marks as well. Correct. And at the same time, it provides the feedback and the hint as well. So just imagine that when the student will go through this answer sheet, they are already aware that, okay, so this step was incorrect, this step was correct. The way the teachers does, we have used the same pattern here as well. And finally, a summative feedback the platform will provide, where it has a scope of improvement. It will explain where the things have gone wrong. Correct. Okay. So this way it works for a digital or a handwritten answer sheets, basically. And now when we say that this platform also supports the co-pilot mode. So basically the co-pilot mode is that the evaluation are done by AI, but as a teacher, you can intervene and you can modify those grades. You can modify those remarks as well. Okay, like if you don't want to rely completely on AI, you can have a manual intervention into that, the way it is happening here on the screen. Correct. So this way the evaluation works basically. Okay, and this was for the handwritten answer sheet. Now let's quickly, I will show you another example where it is a code assessment. Okay, you can see this is the answer sheet of a student. This is the question. Okay, in code example, the student need to write down the code in a compiler. It is an online compiler. The way student will write the answer, it will automatically save. Okay, so no need to manually save the answers.
Always just skip that. You can skip and move.
Yeah, some more examples of simple text based, or you can even say essay based answer sheets.
You can skip that, Parvesh. Yeah,
yes. That. And this is a digital long answers where you can have more number of characters here. Yeah, so this is oral based answers where the student need to record their responses. Okay, there will be a question. Okay, they need to record the answer in a voice format. I'll just quickly hear you out this answer.
Parts, which is information and the link. In a single connected listening, the beginning of the list is marked by a unique pointer.
Yeah, so the logic here is that it transcribes the audio into text format and then it performs the auto evaluation. The format is same, it provides feedback, it does the auto grading as well. Yes. Yeah, so this was for the evaluation that the platform supports. Now, once the evaluation is done, the more important part is reports. So I'll just quickly show you what reports the platform generates here. Okay, so this is the first report, that is a cognitive report that we call this as. Okay, so this is where mapping the questions with this Bloom's taxonomy or any other course outcome that you're using, it is very important, so that it generates reports. Okay, now as looking at the report, it definitely tells you that the score, it tells great about knowledge and understanding, but as you can see, the application of knowledge, ability to analyze, it is completely poor. So definitely the students are not able to answer those questions with this kind of level of questions. Then this is a cognitive, this is a course learning outcome attainment report. Okay, now this is on the course level basically. The previous report that I've just shown, that was for the student individual basis. Now this is on the course, where for each course that you're teaching, whatever types of assessment that you have done from the platform, it tells you for each course outcome how the student has performed basically. You can see the student's name on the left side, and this is the type of assessment and how the student has performed. Now, if I go to the next part of the report, here you can see on the right side, for each course outcome, it tells you what is the score of the student basically. The green color tells you that the attainment is achieved, where the red color tells that attainment is not achieved. Okay, and now from this, you definitely you get to know like the students are well doing on which particular course outcome. Okay, and finally, after doing the average of this, it tells you the complete attainment of this course was achieved or not. Then we go to the next. Okay, this is a multidimensional report. Now, previously we have seen a cognitive report and a attainment report, course attainment report. Now, this is a detailed report where in each assessment, it bifurcates the grades topic wise. For each topic, how the student has performed, it tells you that. The student name, and these are the topics basically, and this is the assessment name. Correct. And at the same time, it also provides some recommendations as well. These are all AI recommendations, and this is dynamically generated on the basis of the score of the student, basically, how they have achieved.
Yeah, please move ahead.
Yeah.
Quickly,
Now we come to the next part, the project-based learning. Okay. So let me quickly show you. So now in project-based learning, basically you can allocate a lot of projects to your students. Okay. And then
you can
we have
leave,
some.
Parvesh, you can leave that part. Okay, we're already
Okay.
running over the time. Okay,
Sure.
thank you, Parvesh. Yeah.
I'll
Just
just cover
leave
this.
that part. No, just
Okay.
leave that part, PBL. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Can you cover this
Thank
one?
you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can just show this
Yeah.
briefly, 30 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a web-based tool that we have created for students basically. It works like a personal tutor for the students at their home. Okay, so any problem that they're solving or doing any homework at their home, they can use this Assessme tool to check like whether the solution or answer that they have written, like how it is correct, incorrect, and it provides a feedback to them basically.
Yeah, thank you, Parvesh.
Sure. I'll just stop the screen. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Pravesh. So, so now that we've seen just a brief demonstration of Assessfy, I want to bridge the gap, or bridge between the demonstration and the actual educational philosophy behind it. So I do want to get final reflections from each of the panelists, but before I do that, I want to ask Bhupesh, I know you've created a framework around turning assessments into learning tools. Can you just share a little bit about that and what that looks like in practice?
So the whole idea that the content-based learning is hitting the ceiling, right? And how we can really leverage assessment to improve the higher cognitive capability, because knowledge is everywhere, right? And that's where we created this framework, and that framework is nothing new, right? It is already there, right? So what we have done, we have created the technology around the process and the framework, which start with fundamental question that what kind of outcomes you want, and those outcomes could be cognitive, those outcomes could be affective outcomes, right, or psychomotor outcome. You define, and from there you actually build the curriculum, and once you build the curriculum, you actually create the assessment around those cognitive capability or standards outcome, and from there you actually generate the assessment, conduct the assessment, take the feedback, right, generate the insight which you can actually use for various learning interventions, which could be designing, say, your teaching methodology, better lessons plans, and other stuff. And again, giving the feedback, do the reassessment, and this whole cycle keeps on going, right? And that's how we'll be able to really build higher cognitive capability, but not only in cognitive capability, also on the affective domain. That's very simplified. It will take really time to really explain, but I think we have the educators and they will really get the sense what we're talking about.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go to wrap up this discussion. I'd love to invite the remainder of the panelists to share a final reflection. whatever you want to share, your thoughts, your vision, your reflection. So starting with you, Georgina, I'd love to hear your final reflection.
So I was just like jotting down some ideas. So I think in closing, I think what's really important, as I always say, with great tools like this, you have to execute a lot of responsibility. And so we have to be responsible in the way that we use this. And so I think that always comes back to core values. So we have to value certain things about teaching and learning to be able to create and use a tool responsibly. So my final reflection really is about assessment has to be about wanting to know what children already know and where we need to take them next to create learning experiences that they deserve. That's the point of the tool, is to tell me in a faster way, what does Bhupesh need next and how can I help him get to his next step? That is absolutely the only reason why we should be assessing children, not to assign a number. So I want that to be really one of the key points. The second point is, I know that Pascal talked about the replacement of the teacher, and I would just say, for my master's capstone project, I did a research project on how children learn best in a classroom. And I surveyed them. Where do you learn best? And all the data showed that children learn best in small group with their peers and their teacher. It was a resounding, overwhelming response. So if we ask children, do you learn from AI? They might say, well, if they're uninformed, no. But the reality is, when we asked children before, because I did it before COVID, it's always with the human in the small group with connection. And we know that all learning, when you go back to educational research, is social. So we can't remove the teacher from the equation. The other thing is, when we look at the big research around Hattie, the effect size for computer-based learning is only 0.31. It doesn't even hit the threshold of 0.4. So Hattie wouldn't even say that it's effective enough to move children forward in their thinking. So that's how we can put guardrails and say, listen, we can use this responsibly to help me be a better teacher. That is the whole point of a platform like this, to help me to get information faster so I know what to do next, so I can spend my energy not on grading endless papers, but to design really awesome learning experiences. And then I would say the other piece is, how do we then also leverage it? And I know I've talked about this several times, in an asset-based way to give children asset-based feedback. Like even on the rubrics I saw, I was like, how do you make all that language asset-based? Like, could it be starting getting there, got it? Like that simple progression is already different than unsatisfactory. And I'm not criticizing your product. I'm actually giving you something we've been thinking about here, because children are telling us when we see that we feel defeated. So how can we use asset-based language and really reimagine assessment so that way they're feeling confident? And then, as always, I'll always say, leveraging it like you are in multiple languages. So like for me in an American school, I can actually have somebody arrive from, let's say, I just had somebody come from the Middle East recently. I could assess them in their home language and actually understand what they know, versus me assuming that they don't know anything, because that's how teachers feel, because they just don't know how to get the knowledge. So I think this is a pivotal point in our history of education. I think it's a way that we can really think about how we free teachers up to actually do what they want to do, which is the art of teaching and learning. Remember, we got a bachelor's of arts and education. It is an art form to be able to teach well. Like, great teachers are artists. So if I can remove busy work and let them be an artist, that's how kids are going to move forward. So those would be my final kind of thoughts. I know I'm very passionate about this, but I've seen assessment break children in ways that concern me. And so I really want to make sure, and like Patrick said, he had that experience. I'm sure I could ask anybody on the panel. They can tell me their bad assessment experience. And I do like what Pascal said in terms of challenging, will a computer replace us? I would say if you ask the children, the answer will always be no. And if you ask the research, it will always be no, because it just doesn't pan out that way. So that's how we debunk the people who are saying that and really try to push on those things that take children away from master teachers, because they are the artists and we cannot remove them from the art.
Well said. I appreciate everything you just said. And yeah, I think, the idea what you mentioned about the rubrics, like customizing that. That's why it's important that we created this to be customizable, because K-12 may have different criteria, different requirements than high school or than higher education. But that's a really good point. Over to you, Patrick. Final reflections.
Yes. I just wanted to kind of, in preparation for this, I was thinking about assessment in two ways. And I just kind of, based upon how we have been speaking, I kind of wanted to go in that direction too. So whatever tool that we're looking at, I think obviously, like I said earlier, it does need to focus on making the role of the teacher accentuated and amplified. Because of that relationship piece. Like, I forget the TED talk it was, but the key moment was kids don't learn from people they don't like. So if you have that in mind, the relationship part is the most essential, the most essential part of the learning process in a classroom. So with that, when we design our assessment systems, I want to make sure that it allows the learner to see where they succeeded, where they struggled, and to give them the opportunity to reflect on that. And reflect not just on their performance, but like back to the learning. So like they were, as they were going through whatever process that was, that, the learning process, they need to think about, okay, when I learned that part of the lesson, I wasn't focused, or I was, doing, so it gives them a chance to do that kind of feedback. What things did they do well in preparation for this assessment? And then what actions did they take while they were trying to learn? Like what methods did work really well for them? So the assessment system has to be able to not just give them the grade feedback, but also prompt them to do all those things too. But then on the assessor, the teacher side, I, as a teacher, and the teachers I work with, they always want to know the trends. Like, what did my kids mostly do well on? What did my kids mostly not do well on? And then to be able to go into the granular part and see what aspects of the assessment standards or topics did individual students struggle with, and then provide the time, and that's maybe where we come in as principals, is provide them the time to be able to have that thought process. Maybe by taking away the manual grading of the assessment, we're giving them the time to have the thoughts and to really think about what parts of their teaching, their lessons, worked well, what mistakes did they make, and what could they have done better globally and also individually with those particular students. As many of you have said, there definitely are systems that are out there that give us pretty granular feedback on student performance, but by creating systems like maybe it's Assessfy or some of these other systems that are out there, we need to make sure that we're giving teachers back the time to think about the decisions that they make in the learning process that affect the results on that assessment. But I also just want to say thank you for the opportunity to kind of hear some perspectives and listen to other educators and learn about Assessfy as well. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. All very valid points. Thank you. Over to you, Pascal. Final reflection.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie, and thank you also everyone on the panel also to allow me to be part of this conversation. I really enjoyed it. I will finish on a maybe a philosophical note, because I think that Bhupesh said, it's hard to use AI to be able to assess philosophy, and I'm not sure if it will continue to be hard, but I think philosophy needs to continue to guide us in this development of artificial intelligence and the impact that it has on education and humanity. There is three. I don't remember exactly the first two quotes, but there is an interesting paradox that was shared by a technologist. I think he works a long time ago on designing Atari. The company, the first video game, etc. And he was saying that in some ways there is a really interesting paradox with artificial intelligence, because if we do it right, we might regain our humanity. And I think that needs to be the line here, this direction we want to take. We want to take this direction where technology is going to allow us to regain our humanity. Unfortunately, when we see when we see people who make decisions all over the world, the conversation about AI does not really exist in the political framework, not enough. And that's a bit unfortunate, because we may not do it right. And so if we don't do it right, we may not regain our humanity. And that's lead me to another quote that, again, I forget a bit the way he said it, but it's an architect who basically say that if we continue to utilize technology the way we're doing it, we might end up being just the tip of a button, meaning that we'll just be someone will push a button and activate everything that happened after pushing this button. We don't want to be just the tip of a finger. And that's I think something that is important. So what I enjoy in the conversation today, for example, is this idea again that we say that being a co-pilot, being able to be in a collaboration, being able to have something here that can help me to go further, to go deeper, to just be a better version of myself. And the last element here, it's something that I lead my reflection on technology, and I want to share it with you, Eddie, and hopefully you will advocate for it in designing technology to support education. It's the Canadian philosopher McLuhan who steals this quote from a friend, but it's attributed to him, where he says, "We are the tool that we behold. We shape tools, and the tools shape us." And we see that in the history of humanity. We have designed some tools that have transformed humanity. And here we are on this very important critical moment where there is a tool that has been designed by human and that is going to clearly define and design which human we're going to be tomorrow. And so the question, which is the Sartre, the French philosopher, is which human are we choosing to be? Because by choosing which human we want to be, we're going to define which humanity we want, and we need to make sure that we're not going to lose sight of this, because the impact is going to be more probably than what we can imagine. In some ways, I could challenge Georgina, when you say that the students say that they will choose the teacher and the small group. You're right. If I ask you, my student, but what is it going to be in 10 years? We're starting to see some research that show that students prefer to ask AI because they feel less judged in the feedback that they receive. We make the assumption also that we're all amazing educators and we all do the things right. We don't. And AI might do a better job than us in certain area. And so I think in some ways we need to make sure we're not just going to be the tip of finger. We're going to regain our humanity. We're going to focus on regaining our humanity and focusing on designing a platform, tools, system for education beyond education that will allow us to define the humanity we want to be. I want to be optimist, but it's not going to be easy. So, and that's why I always say, I will finish with that. That's why I'm here today. That's why anytime I'm invited to be able to engage in a conversation, I want to be there, because I feel it's all of us that need to be able to lead the conversation and see everybody question, show interest in artificial intelligence, want to be part of it, want to be part of the design with some great value. As we see, when I listen to Georgina and Patrick, I see all these great human values, then maybe we will be able to design a tool that will shape us as better human.
That's a wonderful point. And, to your point, like AI is here, whether we like it or not, whether we embrace it or not. So what are we going to do about it? And I think, the point you're really focusing on here is like so valid in the conversations that need to happen. We need to move above and beyond education and really reshape what that looks like for teachers, for students, how we're using the technology. So really, I think cautiously optimistic is really, how we should really look at this, to your point. So thank you for sharing that. So I think, one thing, my biggest takeaway is that the whole theme of this discussion was reclaiming your time with AI auto grading, right? And more often than not, when asked the questions to the panelists, it became about the student, not so much about the teachers and reclaiming the time. It quickly shifted to focusing on what we can give back to the student, how we can enhance learning for the student, what's important to the student. And I think that speaks to the passion and the heart behind all the educational leaders here today. So I just want to commend you all for being here. I think it's clear that with the right tools and thoughtful approach, we can transform assessments into powerful learning experiences. So let's continue to reimagine what's possible in education. And thanks to the panelists, and thanks for everyone for joining us today.